Hey Steve, how are you doing? Thanks again for doing this.
Hey Joey, good to be with you.
Why don't we get started with just you introducing yourself and where you're working at, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So my name's Steve Pakal. I tell people often the last name often throws people off. I get Pakal or Pakal, but I always tell people just think of Pac-Man and then you're good. So yeah, it's Steve Pakal, and yeah, I guess my title is was my senior quality assurance manager at Jackbox Games.
Yeah, and you've been there for a long time. How did you even get into this whole thing that we call the game industry and QA? We worked together at Refactor Games for a little bit, and that was a lot of fun. But how'd you get into
Yeah, it
all
was my,
this?
my first industry job. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for me, many years ago, I was working in different industries and like a lot of things happening. You hear about layoffs happen, and I was like, oh crap, I'm out of a job. And so yeah, it kind of had like at that point I was like in my early 30s, so I was kind of like, do I really want to like pursue something else? And like, like I was trying to think of like stuff and that I'm passionate about and into, and like video game schools and like interactive media schools started like popping up a lot more, and like I always would see like Full Sail or something like
Oh
that.
yeah.
Um, it turns and my cousin who worked downtown Chicago, like he worked right by, he's Clark, and anyways, he was walking by, and this is when at the time it was called Flashpoint was opening up a location right on Clark Street, and he got me like a interactive like marketing CD or whatever you want to call it, like kind of like a brochure, digital brochure, and then he's like, hey, I know you're thinking about switching. I saw this new school pop up, and I was at that time I was kind of like, oh wow, this seems pretty awesome, and like started looking, researching it, and then got an interview and went through the whole like, it's like, oh God, going back to school. I haven't done this in years. And so yeah, well, got accepted and all that, and decided to take the plunge and put down my own money. And it was just kind of terrifying at first. I'm like, oh man, this is a lot of money, but so yeah, it was kind of it was like an 18-month program. So I was kind of like, oh, this is pretty fast. So like it went by like that, and before I knew it, I was graduating, and then kind of like I kind of had like I don't know, like a awakening moment where I was kind of like, because like when I started like video game school, I'm like, oh, I got all these awesome ideas. I'm gonna be this dude who just like, the idea guy in the room. I'm gonna get,
Sure.
yeah, I'm gonna be like the next Cliffy B and all this, and like, obviously he's much more technically skilled than I was, so I was just like, didn't really know like the industry, like how it would like open up doors and stuff. So like once I kind of started like looking at job applications, like okay, like that's not really what the game industry is. There's no like idea guy that you just like So started applying, and I immediately kind of gravitated towards like QA because that was the kind of connections and colleagues I met at Flashpoint and became good friends, and we would have these conversations with each other, and like it was kind of like pretty obvious to us like this is the fastest way into the industry. So that was kind of like our first like realization, like okay, we're gonna this is where we should start, and start applying to jobs, and went through, it was rough at first because you're like doing a lot of interviews and sending out stuff, and but um yeah, because it turns out like making contacts is kind of like the best thing. I tell people like looking for advice, because like I said, I made great friends at Flashpoint, and they ended up getting jobs back when Jackbox was called Jellyvision Games, and they were
Yeah.
making Facebook versions of Jack, and they started working in the customer service department, and then kind of doing like some light QA for the Facebook version, and then um, they started growing, and and sure enough, a buddy there. Actually, I started at Phosphor. I should say I should go back a little bit, but
I know
but
what you mean. Yeah.
that was another colleague that I went to Flashpoint with, and good friend Sean, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, he was like, hey, I got, I can get you a contract job. And I was like, oh yeah, awesome. And like I knew like a Phosphor and had all these like midway veterans and just like a lot of, like really awesome developers. So I was like really stoked to get that. And yeah, worked there for about 6 months, and then back to the job hunt. And that's where eventually another friend, Luke, gave me a recommendation. Like, yeah, we're looking for, contract QA. And I'm like, perfect. I'll take anything, I just was happy to get kind of start building the resume, and So yeah, I worked contract at Jellyvision Games, what it was called back then, for like almost 2 years, and then eventually got hired full time when the company started to grow and shift, and then became Jackbox, and slowly over the years have climbed the ranks, and yeah,
Yeah,
now I'm a senior manager, so it's pretty crazy, you know.
that's awesome going from, yeah, contract QA to senior manager. Is Flashpoint still around? Do you know?
They merged, so like last I saw, like they were the location I went to is closed now, but I think they still have a film school at Columbia because it they
Uh,
merged with like Tribeca and like it became Tribeca Flashpoint in my second year there or whatever. And
yeah.
um so yeah, it's still around, but just in different forms and not but I think mainly it's just a film school now. I don't think they offer the recording arts or the video games or they had
Hmm.
another I think animation, but yeah, just film school now. But yeah, they're around.
Yeah. Did you grow up like playing video games and you did that as a
Yeah,
hobby
of
and
course.
passion?
Yeah,
You
like I
did? It's
was
crazy how like same with me and I didn't consider like that as a career path. Like I went through all my adult life
right, right.
and
It
like
never it seemed like impossible to me at the time, like back in the day, it was like, because yeah, I've been, I'm nearly 50, so I've been playing since the Intellivision and, and so yeah, I grew up with, start with Intellivision, Super NES, Genesis, all that. So yeah, back then it was just like, and even later on, like, in like the Dreamcast era and all that stuff, it was like, oh, this didn't, you never really thought it could be a career, but yeah, I've been definitely been,
okay.
into games since the beginning, you know?
Yeah, it's just funny. Like I had a friend who was going to DePaul for and the program was very early there too. It was like 2008, and it's like I was like finishing my second year at Harper here, like trying to figure out what the hell I wanted to do. And then he mentioned that. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I never even considered that. I'll look into it and
Yeah,
rest is history now.
right, exactly, yeah.
Um, yeah, that's cool. If you could think back to like your phosphor days, since I guess that was your first job, even like early Jellyvision, like new at QA, trying to figure this whole thing out, what were some like challenges that you started encountering and maybe how did you get past that in the beginning?
Yeah, it was when I started at Phosphor, that was more of like you know, like I said, there was a lot of seasoned veterans there and they had kind of like established, processes and software to use. Like we had like, handsaw for like bug tracking and
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
So quickly, at least I got like a kind of like a idea of kind of like, okay, this is how, you enter an issue, you have, you can enter, information and logs and stuff like that. So luckily, I think I felt very fortunate that I had like a lot of experience around me, and yeah, I obviously had a good friend there who could kind of like guide me. And he had been doing it for a few months already, so he would just like show me, So that to me again was a huge plus, is having like someone and trust like to help you kind of get your feet wet.
What's your like mentorship style? Because you're leading a whole QA department now. I'm sure you have fresh people who are new to QA or how do you like to grow your team, I guess? Like what's your
To me, the biggest thing is just like it sounds like cliche or whatever, but it's like just listen a lot, like listen to kind of how what they respond to, what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy, like how work styles and preferences. Like um I think if you I always been very kind of like casual and kind of like goofy like personality with people, and I feel like that helps keep like tensions kind of just like level and just like, okay, hey, well, it's not working for you on this, or like, what could we have done better? And just like when you hear that kind of feedback, like just kind of like and hear like honest feedback, just like to me, that's kind of the biggest thing you can do to support like a team, is just like make sure everyone's voice is heard and listened to and acknowledged, and kind of like make an action, don't just like, oh yeah, we'll get to it eventually, like which happens sometimes, of course, but like I think when you show people like tangible results and stuff like that, I think that's to me what helps like kind of foster that positive energy.
Yeah, totally. You've been doing QA a long time now, and I was the same way. I used it as like I didn't know I used it as like an entry level foot in the door, and I didn't know where I wanted to go after that. I like tried maybe shadowing a producer and like maybe I wanted to do that, but I don't, nothing ever clicked. And I just, obviously, the longer I did QA, the more, I mean, I'm a QA person for life now.
Yep.
And luckily, it's like a discipline now that is like you can actually grow in, and it's like a valuable, or it's like a career path you could actually stay on. Why do you love QA? Why have you stayed in QA?
Yeah, because it's it's when you mentioned that too, it's kind of like similar like sentiments I've had over the years is like kind of like well, like you start in QA, but that I think it's kind of like the assumption that you automatically like you're going to go
Yeah,
into
want
production or
to
you're going to
get
go
out of
into
there. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like which I get to a degree, but I did think about that path for a while, like oh maybe I'd enjoy more a producer role or or starting with an associate producer, like kind of like and um, to me it why I kind of continued on this path was kind of like just interactions I've had over the years and just kind of like taught, like even like former bosses would say, like, I think you really excel at people management and just kind of getting kind of more affirmation about kind of like how I was running things was like, okay, yeah, maybe I'm not a complete idiot. I know what I'm doing here. And like, so yeah, that kind of just kept me like, and then like you said, seeing like progression and stuff, like I never thought like when I started, I'm like, oh, I went from a contractor and I never thought one day there'd be a manager that oversees, internal teams, and then I manage external teams when we bring on like, external support for projects. So I think it's just like realizing like there's a lot more to it than people might think. They just like, oh, well, QA is you just test and stuff like that. And you realize that now I see there's a lot more to it. There's like, documentation and there's
Yeah.
career advancements for your team, and there's just a lot more stuff that I kind of really enjoyed, and kind of that's why I kind of stayed on that.
So like last week I gave like a little virtual presentation to a university. There were like art and engineering students, and I just assumed at this point like people know what QA does, and like you'd be surprised like a lot of even students nowadays who are trying to enter the industry, not just QA, just like in general, still
Yeah.
don't really know what QA does. So like that was the whole point of like my talk, and it was actually kind of difficult to try and explain it. You mentioned uh so obviously you work with like a lot of external QA. Do you bring on like the same teams like for every project, or do you just like shift them around?
No, it's been very occasionally we'll get return like analysts or return like project managers on their side.
Hmm.
So we've had like some, returns of that, but most times it's a new, at least new to Jackbox
Okay.
approach or analyst that we get.
So I have a lot of experience lately of like QA, the whole like shift left mentality of QA being involved a lot earlier in the development process. And, I've also been earlier on in my career where that wasn't a thing. And it's just so nice when we can be integrated so much earlier because, as you know, I'm sure how like all the benefits that brings. Um, how I don't know how it works at Jackbox. I'm sure you can explain if you guys kind of incorporate that kind of shift left mentality with QA, but how do you, I guess, communicate the value of QA to the rest of the development team? Because I'm a firm believer that QA is not the only ones who need to uphold like quality. It should be the whole team. They can do
Right.
different things to kind of make sure we're shipping a good game. So like if have you run into like any hardships in the past of like trying to convince people that like, hey, there's stuff we can do as a team to maybe change things.
Yeah, I think, another fortunate thing for me is like Jackbox has been a studio that's very like supportive and yeah, just supporting of QA and like understanding the importance of it and allowing more like team embedding and stuff like that. And I think they've seen the benefit, when you see like stable products continue to get released, I think that reaffirms and kind of keeps supporting those opinions and so yeah, it's like for example, like we have a yearly party pack series, and several years ago, my boss at the time recommended like, hey, maybe we should like start embedding like members of your team on the developer teams, and we call it the QA lead role. So like for example, there's 5 games in a party pack. Each game team will have like a dedicated, like it started like we called it like a QA liaison, then it became a lead, and
Hmm.
just giving that QA member like from the jump, they're on all the design meetings, the
Yeah.
the play tests, the iterations, the sprint plannings, the sprint reviews, and
Nice.
um, that to me has been like one of our biggest like like revelations or whatever you want to call it. Just like that is really like all the game teams see like how valuable that is, and they're getting daily videos, they're getting bug reports, they're really getting a lot of information from our end, and that I think has like opened everyone's eyes, like, oh, this is definitely a big addition, and like that's why it's been such a great kind of environment for QA here.
Nice. That's good to hear. Yeah, that's my favorite way to work is like embedded QA and like a lot of companies call them like, like the pod structure of like kind of breaking out into
Right,
different
right.
concentrations. And there's, yeah, like that QA lead who leads QA on that focused area. Yeah, that's my favorite way to do QA, honestly. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
like I said, it's been the probably one of the biggest like advancements our department's made over the years, is just like having that role for people, and like I said, it gives them responsibilities, and they're learning skills, and they're just doing a lot of different stuff that maybe like on traditional roles they'd be just like, oh, just find bugs, or close them out, or update your task board or stuff like that. But this is giving them much more a say in, like I said, design and debug requests and stuff like that. And they're really, I feel it's been like I said, just a huge bonus for us.
yeah, that interaction with designers and engineers and producers too, just every day, that really close-knit relationship. It's my favorite. I love that. The industry's crazy right now, as you know. Not, I mean, not just games, but like tech in general, but like what kind of trends are you following in the world of QA that you think all QA professionals should like pay attention to? Maybe like what kind of skills do you think we should be keeping up on to try to stay like relevant in our field and
Yeah, I think obviously the big thing like in recent years is kind of like the role AI is going to play in like game development and maybe even QA and stuff like that. And it's kind of like right now it's kind of like that research phase where you're kind of just seeing like, well, what is even possible? Like
have you messed
maybe
with it a lot?
a
AI?
little bit, yeah. We've started some research, just kind of, just exploratory stuff right now, seeing like, and I'm kind of like checking out like Claude right now and seeing like, could this actually like, be a benefit for us? And I'm starting some early stuff like I had it, spit out like a test plan for me, and it was like, oh wow, this actually
It kind of
has some
works.
possibilities. Like yeah,
Yeah.
obviously you can't replace like, that
Yeah.
human element, obviously, but
No, not yet at least.
yeah, let's hope not, right? Yeah, but
I know.
that's kind of the big trend right now. So I'm just trying to, I think I'm really curious to see like how far it goes for, like I said, especially for, QA, obviously I'm more focused on, but that just the industry as a whole, to see like how much of an impact is this going to have on, like
Yeah.
the industry as a whole. And
Yeah. I used I use AI pretty like a lot actually with and it's helpful to me with like what I do, but like I can't, yeah, it's not nowhere near a point where like I can rely on it 100% without like checking it or like giving it some information to do something, and then I need to like kind of recheck it and like look at things myself to verify. But like
right,
you know, something I'm doing right now is because we're an Unreal game, so I've been and kind of taken lead of like performance testing using Unreal Insights, which is pretty new to me, and it's so complicated and it's really overwhelming to like jump into that tool at first. But I've been using AI to like help me sift through all the data, so like I can feed it just all these CSV files, and then it kind of helps guide me into potential problem areas, and then like I'll
right,
dive in manually. So like it's been cool that way, and like just like organizing. I do like a daily uh change the summary for like our external QA team of like here's like what's new in the build. And
Right.
like I'll use AI to like sift through all the P4 changes and like kind of organize them into like nice summaries and stuff. So like basic can I was doing that manually before, where like I'd manually do all that stuff. So like it's nice to have AI kind of help automate and speed up some of that stuff. But yeah, I'm super curious where it's going to be in 5 years uh, in regards to our field. I the way I look at it is just like to keep using it as like a supplemental tool and
Right.
like, you know, just stay up to date with it and find out different ways I can use it. So it's been fun. I've been enjoying it.
Yeah, that's I'm kind of yeah, I'm like excited and unsure really of like how like I said how the impact is going to have on like stuff like that. But I kind of like I said just like we just started like messing with it like last week, and I did that little
Oh, okay.
test plan test or whatever just to see it. And I'm like you said, I could see how it can like it spits out some stuff, and you're like it makes you think of like okay, well yeah, how can I address it
Yeah,
this way, or I can add a couple line items to that, and like so I'm definitely see some potential and some benefits, but it's a lot to kind of like a lot is in like the TBD kind of phase for it.
I like to. In the past, I've yeah like done the test case thing and specifically like edge cases and like there's been a few times where like it's spit out a couple edge case scenarios that I didn't consider or that like
Yeah.
it made me think of others and I kind of tweaked it. But like yeah, it's I like that aspect of it. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, that's one thing I always say too, is just like there's always another edge case that you didn't plan for or didn't think, there's always one thing that could go wrong or happen, and you're like, oh wow, that and like because yeah, we're constantly updating our stuff with like, well, here's a new issue some person ran into on a specific browser or whatever it might be or whatever. But yeah, there's always an edge case you might not
What
discover. So that's why I could see the benefits of that for sure.
so back in our day, I feel like it was not easy because like games has always been pretty competitive because who doesn't want to work in the game industry, but definitely back then Q like it was easier to get a job as like an entry level QA person, but I feel like now it's not true at all. Um, you someone for like even an entry level QA job, like for one, you're competing against people who have experience just the way the industry is right now, of like everyone is trying to grab that job. But I just feel like you need more of a base skill level now to like enter the industry as a fresh QA, in my opinion. Um, what advice would you give someone who's like maybe it's just like a game development program at a school and maybe they're thinking about coming into QA either permanently or just like an entry point into the industry? Like what advice would you give someone, I guess, who's maybe just looking to get their first job as like a QA right now?
Yeah, I mean, my initial like kind of recommendation is always like don't be a jerk. Like and I know I just mean that kind of like a fate in a way where it's like the more people, even at school, if like back at Flashpoint, we had these like game we would create like I forget the actual name of the like project, but it was actually like making a game and like
Oh,
getting
like the capstone project or
capstone. There you
whatever.
go. That's a good example of it. Yeah, because
Yeah.
you'd have like a whole team with dedicated roles and stuff, and like
Yeah.
postmortems and everything. It was like the full like you kind of got like a real like picture of like what making a game would be or whatever. And like I said a little bit ago, like building contacts to me is like the most beneficial thing you can do. Like the more people enjoy working with you and interacting with you, like they're going to remember you, they're going to think of you, they're going to like, and that's what honestly helped me the most is like I made some really good bonds and friends, and like we kind of had like a little tight knit community. Like, hey, what jobs, like, and that was what obviously like let me because for I was like after like my initial job, I was out of work for a year, and it was like, man, did I make the right decision? Like, it's really hard to get, like you said, like even, and this was many years ago, and like you said, it's even more competitive now. So like, so yeah, building contacts to me is the most beneficial thing you can do. Like, and then just I always say like just don't be afraid. Like you said, even if you're like a skilled like engineer or artist or animator, like I meant QA, like, is the fastest way in the industry. So like, don't be afraid to start there because you can definitely learn a lot. And you can definitely help grow your career that way. So I would, that was kind of my two big like recommendations I give to people is like be kind and be cool, like make sure people like working with you and like keep in touch with the people that and respect and
Yeah.
yeah, and just kind of like I said, don't be afraid to go for like I said, start wherever you can. Like I started like, doing contract on Facebook games and then, did some mobile games and then now I'm doing like, we have like so many platforms I can't keep them all straight and like you're gonna like there's like just so many like advancements that you don't foresee. So like just yeah, those kind of takeaways there, I would say.
Yeah. You guys recently uh were on Netflix, right? Can you
Yeah, we just launched like a couple weeks like last week
Yeah,
or
I
10 days
saw.
ago or so.
That's cool. How was that for you? How'd that go? Any like
Yeah, that I
challenge
mean
any
we
challenges there?
so like from our internal side, they had their own like Netflix kind of like has their own QA, which
Right.
kind of does like a lot of like the bug reporting and stuff like that. So we had a QA lead on that project, SJ, who
Hmm.
did like a tremendous job, and she was kind of managing that project from our end and like showed us how to like set up the testing environments and stuff like that. So from our end, it wasn't like a full on like internal Jackbox QA project because like I said, Netflix was doing a lot of the stuff on their end, but
Right.
we were kind of like in an external role, I would say. We were kind of supporting the main effort and kind of doing stuff like that. So from our end, it wasn't really like a huge like uh lift from QA's perspective. It was mainly on the developers and stuff like that that were like getting the product out, obviously. But
Nice. Hopefully it's going well. I feel like uh the games that you guys make are like a perfect fit for especially for what Netflix is trying to do. Um, so that's really cool. What's something that you try to encourage within like your own QA team that you believe maybe other QA managers within the industry could follow your lead on? Maybe processes you have in place or strategies or tools or just techniques that you use to kind of how you run things over there that you think work really well. We talked a little bit about like, kind of same thing of like shifting left and keeping
yeah,
QA involved early. But is there anything else?
yeah, there's a few things I think like I've been here so it's wild because I've been here like,
So
over
long, yeah.
yeah, so long. So it's like I don't really have a lot to compare to for like other, like obviously I worked at Phosphor for a bit, but like then
Yeah.
I hear stuff from other colleagues about, their departments and stuff, but like comparing it against like a large, like a lot of like other QA departments, I don't probably have like the most like varied perspectives. But I think what really works, I think is something like just like I mentioned, communication is always key, but like be willing to change too is something like I firmly like believe in like, like you might like come up with like, okay, I got a new process for like how we're gonna handle like a group-based task or stuff like that. And like I encourage like open kind of dialogue and like some of, I've gotten feedback. Like, yeah, I don't know if it makes sense that way. Can we do it this way? And then like, or can we, like, can we put subtasks on this instead of like, tagging, like just like minor stuff like that really like goes a long way. And
Hmm.
so yeah, like just like talking, honestly, I know it's like again kind of cliche, but just like finding out what works for people and like what is most, enjoyable to me is like that breeds that good energy and like variation too is another thing I'm like big on, just like giving people like freedom, giving people like varies like variations of like tasks. Like we have like, for example, like we have like group testing on Wednesdays where it's like we test, products, whatever products in development, like as a whole team, we spent, well, like, we go on Discord, we join and all that stuff. And like that really breeds a lot of like good energy and benefits. We have other, other days like ad hoc days where you just kind of allow, not allow people again, that's coming out wrong, but just like you know,
Encourage.
yeah, encourage like ad hoc days where like if hey, if there's stuff you want to explore, like maybe there's some issues or some stuff you've been like on your to-do list, like I want to see how the game responds to this or that. They can, use that time.
Nice.
I encourage, there's also like a focus time dedication where I give people like 2 to 4 hours a week where they can just focus on learning new skills or
Yeah,
softwares.
it's awesome.
Yeah, like advancing, if they're interested, like production stuff, they want to learn like certificates, or if they, I have a few team members right now like doing the intro to Unreal and stuff. So they're,
Mm.
like that, and learning like different like coding languages and stuff. So yeah, I think that too helps like again breed that good energy, is just like giving people some freedom, and they can see kind of like different options. Like, oh, this might be, because I've seen it go like way where like, yeah, I thought like I might be into, coding, but I'm more into like prototyping or art or, automation and stuff like that. So you know,
Yeah, I love when like studios allow like that learning time, like that dedicated learning time. I think that's cool. I mean that's something I try to do on my own anyway, even if it's like 30 minutes a week to like watch some videos or like what have you, because it's so easy to just fall behind. But
yeah, it
yeah.
really helps. I feel like, there's ebbs and flows to it. Like I'm sure like a lot of things, like maybe people are, like projects are taking a lot more time or stuff, but like if you allow like that, because I always say like, I kind of try to reinforce to them is like this, don't worry about Slack, don't worry about, just, work on whatever you want to work on. Even if it's like work related stuff, you can like build that in, but you can think of like ways to like new way, like I said, new processes, new anything like that can. So yeah, I'm a big believer in that. Like giving just, just a break from, like I said, okay, let me check Slack, let me check, my inbox, let me check, this way you can kind of just like I said, learn and explore.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really valuable. What's like one major lesson you've learned during all this time in QA that you wish you knew earlier, like from the beginning?
Hmm.
An experience you had, maybe a failure or like a hard lesson that you went through, you took that and like, going forward, you did things differently or.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that comes to mind the most is just like how kind of like inaccurate like I was in the beginning about like issue reporting and stuff like that. Just kind of like, not being like specific enough, not including enough information, just kind of like, oh, kind of, because I was so like green to the industry, I was like, oh, I'll just like, like put on, oh, the level's broke and like I can't, I can't teleport to this, and like, and then like, the engineers like, well, what does this even mean? Like, like, so like once I quickly kind of like, I think observed like you really got to pay attention to like work styles and preferences of, the developers you're working with. Like, like some might just want a video and that's good enough for them, or some might want a crash log or a debug log, or, you know, more information. Just to me, that like issue reporting was kind of like the thing I was like really poor at when I started, just kind of like, not realizing like like how important it is, obviously, but like yeah, I wish I would have probably like realized that sooner, but I did, like it's kind of like been a prevalent thing now. Like um I've heard from like, developers and colleagues at Jackbox, like, man, your guys' bug writing is awesome. Like it's so much, and I just like it's like honestly like the most rewarding thing to hear, because it's like, oh, I'm glad, because it's just like, we really put a lot of effort in like define processes for it and like the right information and like components, and just like tweaking the kind of like the ticket reporting to be like, as like accurate and concise as possible, to me is like the biggest thing. Like I'm like again big on like concisiveness, like that just so yeah, that's my big like thing. I wish like I would have realized, going in or whatever, like how important that is,
It is, and there's a lot that can go into like a good Jira bug ticket because there's so much you can do with it. Like with all
Yeah.
the dashboards and filters, if you have things set up a certain way and a consistent way, then you can really like utilize those dashboards for like metrics and keeping eyes on things. And yeah, so like getting that established early, or at least it doesn't have to be early, just like even looking at your current process, and if it's not working, trying to change it and making sure the team is like consistent. Yeah, it's hugely beneficial. I've seen that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been huge for us for sure. Yeah.
Throughout your time at Jackbox, has there been a particularly challenging maybe project or time over there that just was really challenging that you'd want to share, like talk about maybe like a fun war story or like maybe a cool win that like QA overcame or
I'd probably go back to the very beginning of like, because like I mentioned, when we first started, we were doing like Facebook games, and then we had a few like mobile apps, and the company was kind of at a crossroads of like, okay, like, what are we going to do? And then we shifted to the kind of these party style games and like going on Steam and consoles, and like we really were like going into that like totally like we had no like idea of like what to expect. I'm talking about from QA side, because it was
right,
just literally it was just like me and Luke, my friend Luke, and like we were like we built the department up from like the ground floor because like we had no idea like about certification for consoles and like learning all this stuff and like but I think that because initially it was kind of like terrifying at the beginning because we're like, man, if from a creative side of like if this doesn't succeed for the company, like, our doors might be closing like permanently. And then like seeing it kind of obviously what it's turned into has been like, beyond phenomenal. But yeah, that first like when we did that first like full party pack, it was kind of like because we had released like Fibbage standalone before that, and like it was doing well, but like this was like a big, 5 games, like $25 title. Like it was like, kind of like our big gamble, and it's paid off obviously. But yeah, that initial thing was just like because yeah, like I said, we had no documentation, we had no expectations of like how are we going to do this, like and like I remember that we were making our own kind of like Excel sheets of just like checklists and stuff and just like learning stuff. So yeah, that was kind of like I said, that was the biggest challenge because we were totally like I said, going into it without any kind of like experience in those like platforms and stuff like that. So it was like I said, a mixture of like, oh shit, and then wait, we can do this, that type of thing. So yeah.
that's the best. That's the best feeling when you come out the other side and it wasn't a complete disaster. What's the best piece of advice you've received in like your QA career?
I think the best advice I got was from my former manager. It was just like kind of like because I was, very like react. I mean, I'm a reactive person. I'm kind of like hard on sleeve and like, like I kind of like sometimes, like I'll just say stuff and it's like, nothing like horrible or anything, but I would just kind of like, if I was frustrated, like I would do stuff, just kind of like, what, what are we gonna, whatever. But like, um, he kind of made me realize like when you kind of like let yourself absorb something first instead of like to say like, oh, if we got to put out a patch for all the platforms, that's going to take like months and months of work or stuff, just for example or whatever. But
Yeah,
just kind of like I remember he said like just allow yourself to kind of like take in the concept first, think about it before you respond, and like that has really helped me kind of grow a
good
lot.
advice. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was like I said, I'm a very like hard on sleeve, and I'll just like say stuff, but without like sometimes thinking it through fully. So I think that helped me from a QA's perspective because it was just like really kind of yeah. I could have I could have reacted better. I could have like realized it and thought it through more before like kind of like determining like, oh, is this going to be even like doable from our, department and stuff like that. So that's been the one like I think I remember the most. And
Mine was not being afraid of speaking up, uh, whether it be concerns or just ideas or, like having a voice and sharing it. That was a good one I got.
yeah, that's a great one too. Yeah, I was thinking of that. That's another very important thing is like, yeah, like using your voice and
I like to tell people too to like be able to take criticism as long as it's like constructive and helpful and obviously not hostile or hurtful. But
right,
like
right.
being open to that kind of criticism, I think is really helpful too. Of like, because you know, me personally, I'm sure many others, like I'm not going to learn or like do better if somebody doesn't like point out,
Yeah.
if I'm doing something that's not really working too well or what have you, and being able to like take that information, not take it like personally as like an attack on my skills or what have you, and like try and, oh yeah, that's a good point. Maybe I should try and do this.
Yeah, for sure. Because like getting that feedback and kind of like a in a candid manner, but like in a very
Yeah,
professional and kind of like supportive way was kind of like, yeah, I really need to like do better at this and be better. And like that's helped me too as like a manager is like responding to stuff and reacting to stuff and like making sure I'm, thinking everything through and kind of like getting all perspectives. But yeah, that's definitely like, so big. And
cool. We're like running out of time here, so I want to wrap it up. But like, what advice would you have to people like us who maybe find themselves out of a job or like they're looking for their next QA adventure in games? I mean, you mentioned networking already, and I think that's like
yeah,
it's so important. I remember hearing it all the way back then when I was in school, and I was like, yeah, like I don't know, I was a shy kid. Like I did my best to network, but like now more than ever, it's so important. And it's come in handy even for me, like just like knowing people and having a contact at a company to just like help get your application at least seen by human eyes or like what
yeah,
have you. It's just like invaluable now. But I guess,
yeah.
do you have any other last words on that topic?
Yeah, I wish I had like more like kind of like relevant insights. Because like I said, I've been at the same place so long. It's like other than like when we're hiring, I see kind of like the volume of like applicants, and you see kind of like how many more people are like out there and stuff. Like
Yeah,
it's
it's crazy.
um to me, I always again just a personal preference, but like when someone gives me like a clean, like concise resume, like I really love, again, personal preference, but I really love like a nice one page, like resume that kind of highlights stuff rather than like, a 3 page kind of like essay or stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah, that's totally insightful, I think. Something
Yeah,
to
and
really
like
look in
just
mind.
even if it's minor like visual stuff, like I've seen some like really clever resumes with like, like a style, like I remember one applicant had this awesome like 8-bit Mario kind of theme to it and stuff like
Oh,
that. And they're very qualified and awesome too, but like just having that little like
catches your
visual
eye.
kind of difference, like was a nice touch. And I think like maybe it's, it can be a crapshoot, I know, because some companies go like,
Yeah,
I
it's
don't,
like you
yeah,
can
like
like go through a rabbit hole of like what your resume should look, especially nowadays with like AI. Like, does AI
mhm,
filter resumes? Does it not? Like, every company is different. And like, are you shooting yourself in the foot by having a really clever and visually cool looking resume, or do you need like a plain text?
yeah,
I don't know, man. I feel like you'd have to talk to a HR person on that end, but like, yeah. No, I agree though. Like having like
yeah,
something that maybe just sets you apart in general.
yeah. And just recommendations obviously is like I mentioned is invaluable. Like if I get a recommendation from someone I know and trust, like that's, all I really need to hear essentially is kind of like my kind of thinking. So like I know again that could be tough to kind of like know somebody who's applying for a job that you know or they know or whatever, but if you have like recommendations, like again that's something I would highlight on like on a resume is like, like if you need to talk to somebody, like,
Just
reach out
start
there. Yeah,
building, yeah, start building it because it is small industry, as people say. And it's true. Like you'll slowly make the connections and like they'll really help you out.
yeah,
So, cool.
big time.
I guess to wrap up, what kind of games you playing nowadays, if you're playing anything?
Yeah, it's with the I don't know the industry and everything. I haven't been playing as much in like recent times. I don't know what really shifted for me, but like I kind of have like a core rotation of stuff. Like I'm a big like anyone knows me like I love Gears, so like I've been like dying for like Gears like E-Day stuff, and like it's hoping like that's coming this year. So I'm like looking forward to like a new Gears because like that was a game I just built like a lot of memories and communities with over the years. So
Hmm.
and seeing the NCAA football franchise like come back after like a 10-year hiatus. It was
Oh,
like,
nice. I didn't know
yeah,
that.
like they finally came back like a couple of years ago, and like, so big college football fans. I love like, you know, that series. I was into a lot of like shorter stuff. I did play not too long ago. I did Hellblade 2. I think it was like the newer
Oh,
one. Like,
hmm.
just I loved it. I know like some people kind of like were critical of it, but
I never finished the first one,
yeah.
but I remember enjoying it a lot. It's very
Yeah, that
cool.
one really impressed me. I mean, visually, it's like
Mm.
beyond beautiful, but like I thought it was a very awesome story. So, trying to think if there's anything more recent, but yeah, like I said, just eagerly anticipating Gears E Day, So
I'm always anticipating the next big MMO. I was really looking forward to Ashes of Creation, but unfortunately that fell apart. But I play a lot of mobile games, honestly. Like I'm playing Monopoly Go. I'm like
yeah,
80 hours in. I was like, what else am I playing? I love to play the Switch with my daughter. She's like gonna be 6 in May, and so like we, she's at that like fun age, so we like play a lot of games together. A lot of games that she can like pick up and play, so that's
yeah.
always fun. What else am I playing? Oh, the original Guild Wars, which is my all-time favorite game.
Oh
It's
yeah, I
like
remember that I remember that from the
it's
soccer days. You mentioned that. Yeah, yeah.
that like Guild Wars 2, I think, came out during like the Phosphor days, but the original one, it's still going, and like it's had like a resurgence of like there's like a small dedicated dev team now on it, and they're like actually putting out like new content for the first time in like 15 years. Like
Oh
it's
wow, that's
it's
crazy.
really
Yeah.
cool. Like the
Yeah.
community's like exploded, and so that's been really cool to see. But cool. Thanks for doing this again. Really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Happy to like yeah, like I said, it was a cool like I said, I've never done like a podcast interview or a QA interview or whatever in this manner. So it was cool to talk about some different stuff.
Yeah, totally. Well, thanks again. We'll keep in touch.
All right, Joey. Yeah, my pleasure.
See ya.
Take care.